The military leader who seized power in 2022 is once again at the center of attention after another alleged coup attempt and a massive public show of support.
2 weeks after a group of young officers toppled Burkina Faso's transitional president, Captain Ibrahim Traoré was officially sworn in. The world's headlines quickly lit up. Instability, insecurity, unpredictability. Outsiders called it a fragile state. Social media overflowed with conflicting stories, some painting a war zone, others hinting at quiet resilience. The truth is, very few actually knew what was really going on inside this landlocked West African nation, Burkina Faso. The country's name translates to the land of upright people. It's Africa's fourth largest gold producer, yet nearly 40% of its population lives below the poverty line. A place where the soil glitters with minerals, but stomachs still go empty. How did that happen? At the heart of this puzzle stands a 36-year-old soldier named Ibrahim Traoré. He first rose to power in 2022, right in the middle of deep national turmoil. Since then, opinions about him have split dramatically. To some, he's simply another rebel who grabbed power with a rifle. To others, he's the second coming of Thomas Sankara, the revolutionary who once dared to reimagine Burkina Faso before his assassination in 1987. The more I read, the more I realized how little I truly understood about this country or the man making these headlines. So I decided to travel to Burkina Faso myself. I wanted to see with my own eyes, meet the people who live these stories every day, and, if possible, hear directly from the new president himself. Stepping off the plane in Ouagadougou, I didn't know what to expect. Was this a military state where fear stalked the streets? Would I find citizens hiding indoors, intimidated by checkpoints and soldiers? What I found instead was normal life. People were busy, markets were noisy, streets were bustling. Even more surprising, women zipping by on motorcycles, young kids weaving through traffic on bicycles. I didn't feel the oppressive air of a dictatorship. Instead, there was movement, commerce, life. Burkina Faso used to be called Upper Volta, a French colony that won its independence on August 5, 1960. True transformation, however, didn't come until 1983, when a bold young captain named Thomas Sankara took over. He changed the country's name to Burkina Faso, land of upright people, and ignited a spirit of self-reliance. That dream ended with his assassination 4 years later, plunging the country back into cycles of unstable governments and foreign dependency. Fast forward to 2022, and another young soldier stepped up. At just 34 years old, Captain Ibrahim Traoré became Africa's youngest head of state. But unlike many before him, his main promise was not to satisfy the West, it was to uplift his people. One local put it best: Ibrahim is not the kind of leader who just gives orders, he shows you the way. Almost immediately after taking power, Traoré expelled French troops. He suspended foreign media outlets like France 24, curbed the influence of international NGOs, and pivoted Burkina Faso closer to Russia and other anti-Western neighbors. It wasn't just politics, it was a statement. Even foreign companies, including airlines, were forced to play by Burkina Faso's rules. There's a story locals love to tell. When French airlines were banned from landing in Burkina Faso due to political tensions, it hit their bottom lines hard. They came back seeking permission to return. Traoré told them bluntly, "Go announce to the world that Burkina Faso is safe and stable. Only then could negotiations resume." Meanwhile, he launched the country's own airline. Modest at first, but purely under local control. It's no wonder that comparisons to Sankara began to swirl again. My curiosity led me to the newly renovated Thomas Sankara Memorial. There, standing on the very ground where the visionary leader was gunned down, I felt the weight of history. The bronze statue towering above the site seemed to whisper that maybe, just maybe, Sankara's dream wasn't dead after all. Driving through Ouagadougou, I spotted something that truly surprised me. CCTV cameras everywhere, at intersections, along highways, outside public buildings. They weren't just decorative either. Traffic violations are strictly enforced, and anyone caught breaking the rules, Burkinabe or foreigner, faces public penalties. Locals laughed as they recounted how even a Chinese visitor was once made to sweep streets for ignoring traffic signals. "Everybody is everybody here," one resident told me. "There's no special treatment." That philosophy runs deep. As we cruise through the city, we pass teams of men patching potholes. It's part of a local initiative to rebuild roads that were once impassable. Many of these routes had been left neglected for decades. But under the new administration, they're being resurfaced bit by bit. There are places we never thought we'd drive through. one driver said. Now, you can go there easily. The more people I spoke with, the more I realized that beneath the economic challenges and scars of past conflicts, there was a new kind of pride taking root, a sense that they were finally the architects of their own destiny. Curious about what it really meant to build a business under this new climate, I set out to meet people who'd taken that leap. That's how I found myself sitting across from the CEO of Let's Go, an electric car company based right here in Burkina Faso. He was warm, candid, and full of stories that didn't match the doom and gloom narratives I'd seen online. Before returning home, he had studied in Turkey. Coming back was a huge challenge, he admitted, sipping his coffee. But when the regime changed, hope returned. Captain Ibrahim was the one who inspired me to come and set up something here. His company started modestly. On launch day, he had just 12 electric cars ready. Then the app went live. Within hours, 10,000 ride requests flooded in. I told my drivers, good luck, he laughed. I just sat down and drank my coffee. There was nothing else to do. Of course, complaints rolled in from customers who couldn't get a ride, but it was proof that demand was there. More importantly, these weren't imports. The cars were assembled locally, part by part, employing Burkinabe workers, cutting costs and building local know-how. He walked me through models named after villages and mountains across Burkina Faso. One SUV was called Tenakuru, after a towering peak. Another compact car carried the name of a small rural community. Each vehicle had a charger you could plug right into a home socket. 4 hours of charging cost roughly $5, a huge saving in a country eager to break from costly fuel imports. Prices started around 11,000 euros, but local banks had begun offering payment plans, making ownership possible for ordinary families. It wasn't just transportation. It was national pride on 4 wheels. Later, he gave me a quick tour of new real estate developments and charging stations popping up along freshly paved roads. We passed by a shiny new mall, almost completed after just 2 years of construction. Inside, apartments were selling fast, some for as high as $440,000 a year, with luxury units overlooking city monuments already sold out. Nearby, smaller homes were being snapped up too. Many buyers opted for long-term payment plans, much like Western-style mortgages, which were still relatively new here. An Airbnb stay in this emerging district went for around $120 a night, a figure that left me blinking. Not bad, I thought, considering this was the same country many labeled a war zone. I wanted to see more of the foundation beneath all this change. So we drove out to a local training center, part of a government initiative aimed at tackling 2 massive challenges at once: terrorism and unemployment. Hundreds of young men and women, many from refugee backgrounds or regions once torn by militant attacks, were learning farming techniques, business basics, and vocational skills. About 150 people cycled through every month. Some would graduate and choose to enlist in the army, determined to protect the country from within. Others returned home to start farms or small businesses, armed not just with tools, but with a sense that they could finally shape their own lives. One of the instructors told me, they come here carrying pain. Many of them have lost family. Some are angry, they want to fight, but many discover they'd rather feed people than pick up a gun. We drove back toward the capital, and my guide took me to a university campus. The vibe felt instantly familiar. Clusters of students chatting in the shade, some glued to their phones, others queuing up at a campus eatery. Only 5 years ago, there was no Wi-Fi here. Today, students can eat a decent meal for the equivalent of $1, and if tuition fees get tough, they can tap into new programs that help them pay later. It's way better than before, a young woman told me, balancing her books. 5 or 6 years ago, you wouldn't recognize this place. Now we have more opportunities. When I asked if many still dreamed of leaving Africa for Europe or America after graduation, she shook her head. That's the old story they used to sell us. Here we have everything. They come take our cocoa, our cotton, our gold, then sell it back to us at prices we can't control. Now, we're finally learning to keep it here. Not everyone was starry-eyed. Entrepreneurs still faced steep hurdles. Banks charged painfully high interest rates on loans. Several business owners told me they wish the financial system would open up more for young startups. Even the president sees this, one man said. He keeps calling on the banks to do something for us. Still, compared to neighbors like Senegal, Ivory Coast, or even Nigeria, many insisted the cost of living in Burkina Faso was lower. Rent for a modest home ran about $25 a month. Even accounting for new taxes to support security operations, people said they paid gladly, knowing it directly funded local schools, roads, and hospitals. And speaking of taxes, there was a darkly humorous local saying, "You drink a beer here, you're funding a hospital." Many actually raised their bottles with a smile, saying they were happy to chip in if it meant the country could keep building. Toward the end of the day, we pulled over at a roundabout. My guide pointed ahead. I squinted and saw dozens of people sprawled out on thin mats, right there on the bare ground. "These aren't homeless people," he explained. "They're volunteers. At night, they sleep outside near the presidential villa. It's their way of forming a human shield around the president. No guns, no barricades, just citizens lying in the dirt to protect the man they believe finally stands up for them. They don't have weapons," my guide said. "They use their voices. If trouble comes, they shout for help." I stood there speechless. In all my travels, I'd never seen ordinary people this willing to defend a leader with nothing but their bodies and their loyalty. And that made me wonder, what exactly had this man done to earn such devotion? What did he offer that past leaders hadn't? Was it simply charisma? Or was there truly something deeper happening here? By the time I sat down with a group of university students again, I was seeing Burkina Faso with very different eyes. They spoke about the sun, how merciless it could be, driving temperatures past 47 degrees Celsius. But then one student laughed and said, "This sun is money, man. We have 9 months of sun here. That's power waiting to be tapped." Indeed, it wasn't lost on me that this country, so often described by outsiders as a victim of climate and geography, had turned even its harshest challenge into opportunity. Solar panel assembly plants were cropping up just outside the main cities. And unlike in many places, there were local rules that forced buyers to first purchase what was made here before importing extras, ensuring the money stayed home. Walking through markets and neighborhood streets, I saw it again and again. The idea that we have enough here. Bicycles and motorbikes zipped by in all directions. Parking wasn't fenced or locked. Instead, people used simple ticket systems. If you wanted to retrieve your bike, you just had to show your number. It was basic, but it worked, another sign of a tight social fabric. Later, we visited a family who'd invited us over for a meal. They served up local dishes proudly, wanting me to see their way of life up close. "Taste it," they urged with big smiles. It was a bean cake that reminded me a bit of Nigerian akara. Not bad, I joked, though secretly I preferred rice. Still, it was the laughter and warm company that stuck with me more than the food. Over and over, I heard locals say they didn't dream of running off to Europe or America. Instead, many wanted to build right here. They talked of family land, of fixing broken systems, of using Burkina Faso's vast cotton fields and gold deposits to create wealth that actually benefited them for once. I asked some of the business owners hard questions. What are the biggest obstacles still? Nearly all of them said the same thing: financing. Bank loans remained tough to get, and interest rates could kill a young business before it started. One pipe manufacturer shrugged and said, "It used to take 3 years just to legally start a company. Now you can do it in a week." But the money, that's still the hardest part. Still, he admitted even that was slowly changing. Our president calls out the banks in public speeches, tells them, "Help the youth." Because without young people building things, nothing changes. As we sat on a shaded patio, one entrepreneur described the cost of living. Rent might be higher than it once was due to new security taxes, but compared to neighbors like Senegal or Ivory Coast, he insisted it was still far more affordable. And people are paying those extra taxes willingly. They know it's going to roads, hospitals, schools. "You drink a beer here, you're funding a clinic," he laughed, lifting his glass. Of course, not everyone online was convinced. There was plenty of disinformation swirling around social media. Before I arrived, I'd read wild claims that citizens weren't allowed to speak freely, or that the president had sold all of Burkina Faso's gold to Russia. So I started asking. Locals pulled out their phones, showing me Instagram and Facebook feeds. "I post whatever I want," one told me. As for the Russian rumors, no, they shook their heads. It's the opposite. We used to get only 10 to 20% from our own gold because Canadian and French companies controlled the mines. Now we've got our own equipment. We extract it ourselves. We sell it ourselves. And yes, we buy some tech from Russia to learn how to do it, but we decide. At the end of our week, my guide took me past a place near the presidential residence that left me stunned. Every night, dozens of people gathered there and slept on thin mats laid directly on the dusty ground. They weren't poor or abandoned. They were volunteers. They formed a living barrier around their president's compound. "If trouble comes, we shout," one woman said simply. "We protect our president with our voices, with our bodies if we have to." I looked around. Policemen watched over them, not to force them away, but to keep them safe while they kept watch. In all my years traveling Africa, I'd never seen anything like it. This was beyond patriotism. It was loyalty built on something deeply personal, a belief that for once the person at the top actually lived for them. One man summed it up perfectly. Our president, he listens. If you have a complaint, he'll show you exactly what's being done about it. That's why we sleep out here for him. He doesn't just give us orders, he shows us the way. By the time I left Burkina Faso, I realized its real treasure wasn't gold. It was this spirit, the quiet certainty among everyday people that they were finally moving towards something better. Not for foreign investors or politicians far away, but for themselves. I asked one last student before departing, "What's your biggest dream for this country?" He didn't hesitate. Peace. With peace, we can do anything. Come back in 5 years, and you'll see. This place won't be the same. Throughout my travels, I've met countless people chasing hope. But here in Burkina Faso, hope didn't feel abstract. It was everywhere. In patched roads, in tiny electric cars, in students with Wi-Fi, in entrepreneurs betting on local manufacturing. It was in dusty mats outside the presidential gate. Maybe that's why when they shout Wakanda forever here, it isn't just a joke. It's a declaration, a promise to keep building until no one has to look outside for what they can grow right here at home. If this story touched you or opened your eyes to a side of Africa you rarely hear about, drop your thoughts in the comments. Like the video, share it with friends, and subscribe so you can follow more journeys like this. I'd love to hear what you think. Until next time, stay curious.